My mother-in-law wanted to move into our house after the wedding, and my fiancé couldn't say no because he thought it was normal. Nobody tells you how embarrassing it is to realize your relationship is falling apart while you're holding a beach bag, a melted lip balm, and one of those stupid plastic room keys that never works the first time. My name is Talia, and before all of this, I honestly thought my biggest problem was that I was tired. Not dramatic tired, not tragic tired, just normal tired, work tired, mom tired, wedding planning tired. The kind of tired where you put your coffee in the microwave, forget it exists, find it cold an hour later, and somehow still drink it because wasting caffeine feels personal. I had a daughter, a small rental house that I loved more than some people love their spouses, and a fiancé who looked perfect on paper if you squinted and ignored his mother standing in the margins with a highlighter. After the wedding, he was supposed to move into my rental because my daughter's school and my job were close by. He was sweet in a lot of ways. I know people always say that right before explaining the giant red flag parade, but he really was. He packed my lunch when I worked late at the dental office. He remembered my daughter's favorite cereal. He could fix a leaky sink without turning it into a performance. He listened when I cried after ugly co-parenting calls with my daughter's father. So no, he wasn't a monster. That would honestly make this easier to tell. He was just the kind of man who could be wonderful until his mother needed something. And then suddenly, I became background noise. His mother had been divorced for less than a year, and everybody treated the divorce like it had happened directly to her nervous system. She wasn't poor. She wasn't helpless. She had a house, a car, friends from church, a sister she complained about constantly but called every day, and enough opinions to power a small town. But she was lonely. And in his family, lonely meant everyone had to rearrange their lives before she had to sit with a feeling for 5 minutes. His brother had figured that out years before. He loved her, but he had limits. My fiancé, however, acted like boundaries were something rude people did. The trip was supposed to be mine and his reward for surviving a rough year. We had saved little bits of money from bonuses, refunds, spare cash, and the depressing envelope in my kitchen drawer labeled vacation, like I was a 70-year-old accountant. Originally, we were going with his brother and his brother's wife to a beach resort on the Gulf Coast. Nothing fancy, but nice enough that I had already looked at the breakfast pictures online like a woman with no dignity. Then his brother and his wife canceled because they found out they were expecting, and she was too nauseous to travel. I felt bad for them, obviously. I also felt a tiny evil spark of excitement because that meant the trip could become romantic. Just us. No family, no schedules. No pretending I wanted to spend my vacation discussing his mother's neighbor's fence situation. My daughter was going to stay with my mother for the week. My sister would be around too, with her kids. So my daughter was thrilled. She packed stuffed animals like she was moving continents. I felt guilty leaving her because mothers are apparently born with a little guilt factory installed behind the ribs, but I also needed the break. I needed to sleep without someone asking where the blue cup was. I needed to kiss my fiancé without hearing a cartoon in the background. I needed to remember I was a woman, not just a calendar with anxiety. We announced the updated plan during Sunday lunch at his mother's house. I say announced like it was formal, but really we were eating dry chicken while she asked too many questions about whether my daughter was adjusting to us being engaged. She had this way of saying my daughter like the words had a tiny thorn in them. Not cruel enough that you could call her out without looking insane, but not warm either. My fiancé told her his brother and wife had canceled and we were still going alone. His mother put her hand over her chest and said, "Oh, how sweet. A little couple's trip before the wedding." I relaxed. Rookie mistake. Truly amateur work from me. I had to leave early because I had patient files to finish before Monday, so I kissed my fiancé, hugged his mother because I had manners and a self-destructive streak, and went home. A few hours later, he came over looking like a dog that had eaten an entire couch cushion. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, wearing pajama pants with a bleach stain on the thigh, feeling very glamorous and bridal. He said, "So don't get upset." I laughed because what else do you do when someone opens with a threat wrapped in bubble wrap? That sentence has never led to peace. He rubbed the back of his neck. My mom offered to pay for the whole trip. I blinked. Okay, why? Because she wants to do something nice for us. I stared at him. He stared at the floor. My stomach already knew. My brain was just catching up like a slow little intern. And? I asked. And she would come with us. I wish I could say I reacted gracefully. I didn't. I made a sound that was not a word, not a laugh, not a cry. Maybe a noise only women in bad relationships can produce. Absolutely not. He started immediately. She was depressed. She had been alone too much. She felt abandoned. She had always wanted to visit that part of the coast. She was trying to help because paying meant we could save money for the wedding. She would get her own room. She wouldn't be in the way. It would be good for everyone. Every sentence landed like a little slap because I could tell he had already agreed before ever walking into my kitchen. I said, "So you told her yes?" He said, "I told her I would talk to you." I said, "That's not what I asked." And he just looked at me. There it was. The answer without the honesty. I got mad. Not cute mad. Not a single tear rolling down my cheek while I whispered about respect. I got ugly mad. I slammed my laptop shut too hard. I said things like, "Are you marrying me or adopting your mother?" And, "Should I pack lingerie or a bingo card?" And yes, I regret that last one because it was mean, but I also stand by the emotional accuracy. He told me I was being cruel. I told him he was being a coward. We did that couple thing where the fight becomes about the tone, because the actual issue is too real. And by the end of it, I was shaking. Then he said the thing that always got me. She's been through a lot. Still, money is manipulative even when nobody means it that way. The trip being paid for meant our wedding savings stayed intact. It meant less pressure. It meant maybe we could replace the fridge that made a noise like a dying lawnmower. So after a long, stupid fight, I agreed with conditions. Separate rooms, at least a couple of dinners alone. Freedom to do some activities without her. No surprise schedules. No shared everything. He nodded like a man signing a peace treaty. Then he held my hands and said, "If she crosses a line, I swear I'll handle it myself." I wanted to believe him so badly that I treated wanting as evidence. That was my first real mistake. Or maybe not the first. Maybe the first was ignoring how many times his mother had already crossed little lines and he had stepped over them with her. The morning we left, my daughter cried for exactly 30 seconds, then saw her cousins running around my mother's living room and forgot I existed. I hugged her anyway, probably too tightly, because my guilt needed a target. My mother told me to enjoy myself and not check my phone every hour. My sister leaned against her doorway and said, "Call me if his mom gets weird." I said, "She's already weird?" My sister said, "Then call me when she gets illegal." Nobody knew how close I would come to calling her from a hotel bathroom while whispering like a fugitive. Not illegal exactly, just emotionally insane, which honestly should have its own hotline. At the resort, I tried to reset. The lobby was bright and cold, with fake plants, shiny floors, and music that sounded like it had been designed by a committee. I thought, okay, maybe this will be fine. Maybe she really did book separate rooms. Maybe I had been unfair. Maybe I was bringing old resentment into a new situation. I was doing that little self-gaslighting routine women do when they don't want to be called difficult. Then the front desk clerk handed over one packet of room keys. My fiancé frowned. There should be 2 rooms. His mother smiled too quickly. "Oh, they upgraded us." I looked at her. "Upgraded us to what?" "A suite." "1 suite?" She waved her hand. "It's huge. Don't start. It has separate spaces." Don't start. Girl, when I tell you my soul left my body, looked around, and considered staying in the lobby. The suite was not huge. It was nice, yes, but it was not 3 adults with boundaries nice. There was a bedroom with a big bed, a sitting area with a pull-out couch, 1 bathroom, and a balcony. 1 bathroom. 1. For 3 grown people, one of whom had already asked me whether I used a sleep mask because she was sensitive to light. His mother walked in like she owned the place and said she would take the bedroom because her back couldn't handle the couch. Then she looked at my fiancé and said, "You don't mind, do you, honey?" He looked at me. I looked at him. The promise stood between us like a wet towel. He said, "Maybe Talia and I should take the bedroom." She went quiet. Not angry quiet, wounded quiet, professional wounded quiet. She put her purse down slowly and said, "Of course. I just thought since I paid, and since I'm older, but it's fine. I'll manage." I hated that it worked. I hated watching his face fold. I hated that he glanced at me like I was supposed to rescue him from the discomfort she created. I said, "We agreed on separate rooms." She blinked at me. "There weren't any available at the same rate." "Then you should have told us." I didn't want to upset anyone. I almost laughed. Truly, the commitment to chaos was impressive. My fiancé pulled me aside near the bathroom and whispered, "I'll talk to the desk." He did. Sort of. He went downstairs, came back 20 minutes later, and said everything else was too expensive or too far from the main building. His mother sat on the edge of the bed pretending not to listen while absolutely listening with her whole skeleton. I said, "Then we pay the difference." He said, "We can't just spend that right now. We were spending money before she offered." He lowered his voice. "Please don't make this a thing on the first day." There it was again, me making it a thing. Not the woman who changed the room, not the man who let her. Me, the person reacting. We ended up on the pull-out couch. Yes. The engaged couple on the pull-out couch while his mother slept in the bedroom on the trip she had inserted herself into. I lay there that night staring at the ceiling, listening to her white noise machine through the half-open bedroom door because she didn't like sleeping with the door closed in unfamiliar places. My fiancé touched my shoulder and whispered, "I'm sorry." I whispered back, "Are you sorry enough to fix it tomorrow?" He didn't answer fast enough. Every time I tried to peel away, she reacted like I had announced I was leaving her in the woods. If I said I wanted to nap, she said, "Oh, I guess some people can sleep through a beautiful day." If I said I wanted to read, she said, "Books are for when you're alone." If my fiancé and I stood too close, she suddenly needed him to look at something on her phone. If he kissed my forehead, she made a joke about young love being exhausting. It was death by tiny paper cuts, and because each one was small, he acted like I was bleeding on purpose. The worst part was how she talked about my daughter. Not directly mean. Directly mean would have been easier. She kept making little comments about how nice it must be to have a break from all that responsibility, or how my daughter was lucky my mother could step in, or how blended families required extra patience. At lunch on the second day, she said, "After the wedding, you'll have to make sure the marriage stays the priority. Children can become the center of everything if you let them." I put my fork down. My daughter is a child. She is supposed to be prioritized. She smiled like I was adorable and stupid. "Of course, but your husband will need to feel like he matters too." My fiancé said, "Mom," but soft. Too soft. The kind of soft that asks the other person to please stop making him uncomfortable, not the kind that defends you. I said, "He matters, but he is not competing with an 8-year-old. His mother blinked. I didn't say he was. I looked at him. He looked at his plate, and I felt something inside me take a step back. That night, I tried to save the trip. I really did. I put on the one dress I had packed for a romantic dinner, the one that made me feel like a person instead of a snack dispenser. I did my makeup in the bathroom while his mother kept asking through the door whether I had seen her travel hairspray. My fiancé came in wearing a clean shirt and gave me this tired little smile in the mirror. I said, "Tonight is supposed to be ours." He said, "I know. Do you?" He kissed my shoulder. I talked to her. She knows we're having dinner alone. For one fragile, stupid second, I believed in the man I thought I was marrying. Then we walked out and found his mother sitting on the couch in a flowy top, earrings on, purse in lap. She said, "Ready?" I said, "For what?" She looked between us. "Dinner." My fiancé froze. I felt heat climb my neck. He said, "Mom, we talked about this." Her face fell. "Oh, I thought you meant tomorrow." "No, I meant tonight." She gave a tiny laugh that turned into a sigh. "It's fine. I'll just eat alone." I said nothing. I was proud of myself for that, actually. Growth. Temporary growth. She stood up, then sat back down like her knees had given out. "I just didn't realize I was such a burden." My fiancé closed his eyes. I knew. I knew before he said anything. The whole scene had already been written, and I was just waiting for my line. He said, "Can we do our dinner tomorrow?" I stared at him. "No." "She's upset." "I am upset. Please don't do this right now." I laughed once, sharp and ugly. "I'm not doing anything. I'm wearing eyeliner in a shared hotel room while your mother performs abandonment on a pull-out couch." His mother gasped. He snapped my name. And that was it. Something in me just went clean off the rails. I grabbed my room key and left. Not with dignity. I couldn't even find my sandals at first and had to shove my feet into the wrong flip-flops, which belonged to his mother. So imagine the symbolism. I made it to a quieter area near the pool, sat on a chair in my nice dress, and ordered a drink from the bar. Then another. Not enough to black out, not enough to be unsafe, but enough to make my emotions loud and my judgment wobbly. I texted my sister a series of messages that made perfect sense to me at the time, and apparently looked like a raccoon had been given a phone. She wrote back, "Call me." I didn't. Because I was crying, and I didn't want to hear my own voice. My fiancé found me maybe an hour later. He looked angry and embarrassed, which made me angrier because embarrassment meant he still cared more about how things looked than what had happened. He said, "People can see you." I said, "Good. Maybe they can explain your life to you." "Talia, stop." "No, you stop. You keep telling me she's fragile." "What am I? Furniture?" He sat beside me and lowered his voice. "You had drinks. You're not being fair." I turned to him slowly. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Use the drinks to make me the problem." He rubbed his face. I'm not. But you're making this bigger than it has to be. And maybe it was the drinks, maybe it was the shared room, maybe it was the comments about my daughter, maybe it was the fact that I had spent years being reasonable and was now allergic to it. But I said, choose. He stared at me. I said, me or your mother. Not forever. Not in some cruel way. Right now. This dinner. This trip. This relationship. Choose who you're actually building a life with. His mouth opened, closed. He looked back toward the building. I nodded. Wow. He said, I'm not doing ultimatums. I said, no, you are. You just make me live inside them quietly. He stood there for another second, then walked back inside. When I finally went back, his mother was in the bedroom with the door mostly closed. My fiancé was awake on the pull-out couch, sitting up with his elbows on his knees. He looked wrecked. For a second, I softened. That's the annoying thing about love. It doesn't always leave when your pride tells it to. He whispered, I'm sorry. I sat on the edge of the couch, still wearing the dress, mascara probably doing its own vacation down my face. He said, I messed up. I waited. I should have made sure we had separate rooms. I should have taken you to dinner, I know that. I said, you can't apologize and defend the thing in the same breath. He looked exhausted. I called my brother. That surprised me. When? After you left. And? He said I was being an idiot. I almost smiled. His brother and I weren't close, but suddenly I considered sending him a fruit basket. My fiancé said his brother told him that their mother had done this before in smaller ways. Testing doors, pushing into plans, needing rescue whenever someone tried to build a separate life. His brother had learned to say no after his own marriage almost cracked under the pressure. He had apparently told my fiancé, if you don't fix this, don't be shocked when she walks. Hearing that should have made me feel validated. It did, but it also made me feel worse because it meant this wasn't my imagination. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a known family pattern, and I had been invited to marry into it without being given the full brochure. My fiancé took my hand. Let me fix the rest of the trip. Please. I promise when we get home things will be different. I looked at him, and I wanted so badly to be the kind of woman who could accept that. The forgiving woman. The patient woman. The woman who helps her man grow through complicated family dynamics. Instead, I felt tired down to my bones. I said, okay, because it was late and I was emotionally bruised and I didn't have a plan. But inside, something had shifted from maybe we can fix this to maybe I need to survive the next few days without losing my mind. The next morning, I woke before both of them, for the room smelled like hotel air conditioning and someone else's perfume. I slid out of the pull-out couch carefully and went to the bathroom with my clothes tucked under my arm because privacy had become a luxury item. When I came out, I heard voices on the balcony, his mother and my fiancé. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop at first. Then I heard my name, and suddenly I became the nosiest woman in the Southeast. No shame. His mother said, she doesn't understand what it's like for me now. He murmured something I couldn't hear. She said, after you get married, I don't want to be alone all the time. I was thinking maybe I could spend longer stretches at your place. A few weeks here and there, maybe more when I'm older. My entire body went cold. He said, we'll figure it out when the time comes. Not no, not we need boundaries. Not Talia and I need our own space. We'll figure it out. That phrase is where women's peace goes to die. His mother kept talking. She said a family should take care of its own. She said she didn't want to end up like one of those forgotten women. She said if I really loved him, I would understand that she came with him. Then she laughed softly and said, besides, her little girl will need a grandmother figure from your side. I gripped the clothes in my hands so hard my nails hurt. My daughter already had grandmothers. She had my mother, who showed up. She had a complicated, distant grandmother on her father's side, sure, but that was not an opening for this woman to audition. More importantly, my daughter was not a comfort animal for a lonely adult. That conversation dragged a memory out of me so fast I almost got dizzy. A few months earlier, on Mother's Day, my daughter had woken up early with me to make pancakes. She had drawn a little card for me and one for my fiancé because she said he was almost family. He had promised to come over for breakfast before visiting his mother. Then his mother called crying because the holiday felt hard after the divorce, and he canceled on us. Just like that. My daughter sat in the back seat later, holding the card she had made him, quiet in a way children get when they don't want to ask why they weren't enough. No, absolutely not. I could be stupid for myself. I had been clearly, but I could not be stupid on her behalf. I didn't confront them then. I know. Shocking. For once, I chose strategy over volume. I put on shorts, washed my face, and acted like I had a headache. His mother looked pleased in that fake sympathetic way and said maybe I needed to rest after last night's excitement. My fiancé shot her a look. But again, a look is not a boundary. They had a resort activity planned. Some guided thing his mother had signed up for because apparently vacation should come with attendance requirements. I said I would stay behind. My fiancé hesitated. Are you sure? I smiled, and I swear it felt like my face belonged to someone else. Yeah, go. I'll nap. The second the door closed, I moved. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my toothbrush twice. I packed like a burglar. Clothes, charger, makeup bag, the little envelope of emergency cash my mother always made fun of me for carrying. I checked under the bed, in drawers, behind pillows, because panic makes you both stupid and thorough. Then I realized my wallet was in the room safe, along with my ID and the spare cash I had brought. For one horrible second, I thought that ruined everything. Then I forced myself to breathe, opened the safe, grabbed my wallet, my ID, the spare cash, and the bead bracelet my daughter had made me that I had tucked beside it for luck. I zipped my bag and got out before I could talk myself into staying. I made it into the car I had called, watched the resort shrink behind me, and only then did my phone start exploding. My fiancé first. Where are you? Mom said your bag is gone. Talia, answer me. This isn't funny. Then his mother. I cannot believe you would do this after everything I paid for. Please don't punish my son because you had a bad night. A mature woman doesn't run away. Then him again. Softer. Please, I'm worried. That last one hurt. I wanted him worried. I also hated him for waiting until I disappeared to act like my presence mattered. I finally texted back. I am safe. I need space. Don't come here. Then I put the phone face down because if I kept looking at it, I knew I would start explaining myself to the person who had made leaving feel like my only sane option. At the smaller hotel, I checked in, locked the door, put the chain on, and sat on the bed with my bag still beside me. The room had beige walls, a humming air conditioner, and a view of the parking lot. It was beautiful because nobody's mother was in it. I called my sister. She answered with, "Are you alive?" I burst into tears. I told her everything in messy pieces. The room, the dinner, the drinks, the balcony conversation, the Mother's Day memory. My sister didn't interrupt much, which is how I knew she was furious. Usually she interrupts like breathing. When I finished, she said, "Okay, first, you're not crazy. Second, you made a dumb post earlier and I need you to delete it." I sniffed. What post? You posted a picture of your coffee in the hotel lobby with the location sign behind it. Genius. I groaned. I had posted it to reassure my mother and a few relatives that I was safe without telling the whole story. I didn't even notice the hotel name in the background. I deleted it immediately, but not before enough people could have seen it. Apparently, when I run from my problems, I leave breadcrumbs like a tired fairy tale idiot. My sister said she could fly down for the last couple of days if I wanted. I told her not to waste money. She said, "Too late. I'm already looking." That's my sister. Tender like a brick through a window. By evening, the social damage had started. His mother posted on a social media app about being abandoned on a family trip after paying out of love. She didn't name me, because people like her enjoy pretending they are above drama while setting drama on fire in the driveway. The comments were mostly vague. People saying prayers, people saying family is everything. One woman wrote, "There are two sides," and I could have kissed her on the forehead. The next morning, I woke up to my mother's missed calls. I called her back and tried to sound calm. Failed immediately. She listened, then asked one question that cracked something open in me. "Is this how you want your daughter to see you loved?" I said, "No." She said, "Then come home when you're ready, but don't go backward because you're scared of being the bad guy." I hated how simple that sounded. It wasn't simple. It felt like cutting off a limb that still had feeling. But she was right about the bad guy part. I had spent so long trying to be fair that I had confused fairness with offering my throat to anyone who felt wounded. My sister arrived the next afternoon, dragging a small suitcase and wearing sunglasses indoors like she was entering witness protection. She hugged me so hard my ribs complained, then looked around the room and said, "Honestly, cute enough for a breakdown." I laughed for the first time in days. Not a big laugh, more like a cough with hope in it. That should have been the end of the resort part. It was not, because my fiancé showed up at my hotel the next day. I had gone downstairs to ask for extra towels because emotional collapse apparently comes with extra showers, and there he was in the lobby, sitting in a chair near the front windows, holding his phone with both hands. For a second, I thought my brain had produced him out of stress. He stood up. "Talia." I felt my whole body lock. "How did you find me?" He looked ashamed at least. "The photo you posted." The sign was in the background. I wanted to sink into the floor. Not because he found me, because my sister had warned me and I had still underestimated how stupid one little picture could be. I said, I told you not to come. I know. I just need to talk. My sister, who had come down behind me because she trusts no man in a lobby, stepped beside me. She said no. He looked at her like she was an obstacle instead of a witness. Please. 5 minutes. I should have walked away. Truly. But closure is a drug, and I was in withdrawal. I told my sister we could sit in the corner where staff could see us. She didn't like it, but she sat one table away with the energy of a guard dog in earrings. He said, I'm sorry. I said, for what? He blinked. I said, no, really. For what exactly? He swallowed. For letting her come without making sure you were okay with it. For the room, for dinner, for not standing up faster. Faster? I said. You didn't stand up at all. You crouched emotionally. He flinched. I felt bad. Then I remembered the pull-out couch and felt less bad. He said, I know I handled it wrong, but leaving like that scared me. I told you I was safe. After. Because if I told you before, you would have stopped me. He didn't deny it. I asked him the question that mattered, even though my voice shook. When your mother said she wanted to spend long stretches at our house after we got married, why didn't you say no? He looked down. Answer me. He said, because I don't know if I can say no to that completely. There it was. The cleanest truth he had given me. He rushed to explain. She was aging. She was scared. He was her youngest. She had sacrificed a lot. Maybe she could stay sometimes. Maybe we could build an in-law space later. Maybe my daughter would benefit from more family. Maybe we were thinking too negatively. I listened, and with every maybe, I felt the ring on my finger get heavier. I said, you are planning a marriage where your mother is a permanent roommate I have to negotiate with. No, that's not what I mean. It is. You just don't like how it sounds when I say it without soft lighting. He reached for my hand. I pulled back so fast the chair scraped. A man at the front desk looked over. My fiancé noticed and went pale. I said, don't. He whispered, please don't end us here. I took off the ring. My hands were shaking, and for one ridiculous second it got stuck over my knuckle because apparently even jewelry enjoys drama. I put it on the table between us. He stared at it like I had placed a small dead animal there. I can't marry you, I said. He pushed it back toward me. No, you don't get to know this. Talia, please. I love you. I do. And that's the worst part. Because if I didn't, this would be easy. But I have a daughter. I have a home. I have a life that I fought to make peaceful. I cannot bring your mother's loneliness into the center of it and call that marriage. He cried, quietly, but he cried. But I almost broke. My body wanted to comfort him because I had comforted him for so long that it felt like muscle memory. My sister shifted at her table, and that tiny movement brought me back to myself. He said he would talk to his mother. He said therapy. He said postponing the wedding instead of canceling. He said separate houses. He said anything that sounded like a door not closing. I wanted every word to be enough. But all I could think was, why did it take me leaving for you to find vocabulary? I told him to go back to the resort, finish the trip however he wanted, and leave me alone until we were home. He nodded, devastated and angry and ashamed all at once. Before he left, he said, my mom thinks you're punishing both of us. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because my soul had run out of polite options. Tell your mom she's not the main character in my breakup. He walked out and I sat there staring at the ring. My sister came over, picked it up with a napkin like it was evidence, and said, do you want this in your bag or should I throw it into the nearest body of water? In my bag, I said. Boring but legally safer. When we flew home, I kept my phone on airplane mode longer than necessary. I dreaded landing because landing meant real life. It meant telling my daughter the wedding was off in a way that didn't make her feel abandoned again. It meant dealing with his belongings in my house. It meant family questions, deposits, canceling things, returning gifts, and the quiet humiliation of becoming a story people whispered about. My mother picked us up from the airport with my daughter in the back seat. My daughter launched herself at me before I even closed the car door. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and crayons. I held her and thought, this is the reason. Not because she needed me to be single. Not because my life had to revolve around her in a way that erased me. But because she needed to see home as a safe place. She needed to see me choose peace even when peace was expensive. I told her that night while we sat on her bed. Not the details. She didn't need adult mess poured into her lap. I said my fiancé and I had decided not to get married because we wanted different things for our home. She asked if she did something wrong. I wanted to find every adult who had ever made a child ask that question and make them step on toy bricks forever. I said, no, baby, this is grown-up stuff. You didn't cause it. You couldn't fix it. You are loved. She asked if she would still see him. I hesitated. I hated that hesitation. He had been kind to her. Not father, no, but present enough that his absence would leave a shape. I said, I don't know yet. We're going to take space first. She nodded, then asked if she could keep the stuffed turtle my ex had once won for her at a fair. Children are amazing and brutal. I gave it to her and cried later in the laundry room where nobody could see me. The next day I called a lawyer who had helped my cousin with a lease issue. I didn't want a giant legal battle. There was no shared house, no marriage, no joint bank account. But he had been staying over most nights, had clothes in my closet, tools in the shed, mail sometimes delivered because he ordered things to my address out of convenience. I needed to know what I could do without accidentally creating a mess. The lawyer was calm in a way that made me calmer. She said since he had his own apartment, paid no household bills, wasn't on my lease, and had maintained his official address elsewhere, I could ask him in writing to arrange a time to collect his belongings. She told me to document everything, have someone present, avoid being alone with him during the pickup, and keep communication in text. Simple, boring, beautifully boring. I sent him a message that took me an hour to write because every version sounded either too cold or too emotional. Eventually I wrote, I need you to pick up your belongings from my house this week. Please send a time that works. My sister will be here. Communication about this should stay by text. He replied 2 hours later. Just, fine. He chose Saturday morning. My sister came over early with coffee and a face that said she was hoping someone would test her. My mother kept my daughter at her house because I didn't want her seeing any of it. I packed his things into boxes as much as I could. Clothes, chargers, a few books, shaving stuff. The old hoodie I had stolen so often it felt partly mine. I almost kept it. Then I smelled it and cried into it like a fool, so I threw it into the box with unnecessary violence. He arrived alone, or so I thought. He stood on the porch looking thinner, holding his keys, eyes avoiding mine. My sister stood inside near the kitchen, visible enough to make the point. I opened the door but didn't step aside. Boxes are by the hallway, I said. He nodded. Can we talk? No. His jaw tightened. That's it? For today, yes. He looked past me into the house, and I could see memories hitting him. The couch where we watched bad shows, the little table where my daughter drew, the wall where we had taped paint samples for the room we said would become an office after the wedding. I felt cruel. Then I remembered sleeping on a pull-out couch while his mother took the bedroom and felt less cruel. He said, My mom is outside. My whole body went hot. Excuse me? She drove me. He has a car, my sister said from behind me, because she has never met a silence she respected. I looked past him and saw his mother's car by the curb. She was already getting out. Purse on her arm, sunglasses on, face arranged into wounded dignity. I stepped onto the porch and pulled the door mostly closed behind me. She said, I think we all need to have a calm conversation. I said, You need to get back in the car. He said, Italia. I turned on him. No, you brought her to my house? She wanted to apologize. His mother lifted her chin. I wanted to clear the air, especially for the child. That did it. That phrase opened something feral in me. Don't mention my child, I said. She looked offended. I care about her. You barely asked about her unless you were using her to make a point. That is not fair. Neither was hijacking my trip, taking my privacy, insulting my parenting, and then acting abandoned when I left. My voice was getting loud. A neighbor's curtain moved. I saw it and hated it, but I couldn't pull myself back fast enough. His mother stepped closer to the walkway. I said, Don't come onto my property. She stopped, eyes wide like I had slapped her. After everything I have done for you? I laughed. I know that sounds bad. It was bad. It came out sharp and mean. You paid for a vacation you ruined. Congratulations. He said, Stop talking to her like that. And there it was. Even on my porch, at my house. During the breakup he caused by choosing her comfort over our relationship, he still corrected my tone before correcting her behavior. I looked at him and felt the last soft piece of me harden. Get your boxes. He carried them out one by one. My sister took pictures, not in his face, just enough to document. His mother stood by the car crying silently. I wanted to feel guilty. A small part of me did. A larger part of me felt like I was watching a play I had finally stopped auditioning for. When he came back for the last box, he held out the ring. I hadn't realized he had brought it. Keep it, he said. I don't want it. I said, neither do I. We stood there like idiots with a ring between us again. Finally, my sister took it and said, great, I'll put it with the other cursed objects. He almost smiled. Then he didn't. He said, I really did love you. I said, I know. But you loved me like I was supposed to fit around her. He didn't answer. He left with his mother, and when the car pulled away, I walked inside, closed the door, and slid down against it like a dramatic teenager. My sister sat on the floor beside me without saying anything. We stayed there for a while. 2 grown women on the entryway floor, surrounded by dust where his boxes had been. For the next week, everything felt both too quiet and not quiet enough. People noticed the wedding post disappearing. My mother handled a few calls because I couldn't keep explaining it without feeling like I was trying to convince a jury. I canceled the venue tasting. I emailed the photographer. I returned gifts from 2 relatives who had mailed things early because apparently some people hear wedding and immediately buy towels. Each cancellation was small but brutal. Delete this event. Cancel that appointment. Remove this shared plan. It felt like unbuilding a house with tweezers. His version of the story started circulating through our little circle. He didn't go full villain. I will give him that. He didn't call me crazy outright. He posted one vague thing about being blindsided by someone who couldn't handle family. His mother commented a heart. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Then his brother messaged me. I hadn't expected that. He said he was sorry, that he had tried to warn my ex and that their mother had a long history of turning loneliness into obligation. He said his wife had nearly left him early in their marriage because he kept letting their mother intrude, and he only changed after therapy and some very ugly fights. He didn't ask me to reconsider. He didn't defend the family. He just said, you weren't wrong to want your own home. I cried reading that, because validation from inside the family felt different. It didn't fix anything, but it turned down the volume on the voice in my head, asking if I had overreacted. Some friends quietly took my side, not with dramatic statements. Real life isn't usually a courtroom scene where someone stands up and reveals the truth while everyone gasps. It was smaller. A friend stopped liking his posts. Another texted me. I heard some of it, and I'm sorry. One of his cousins sent a message asking if my daughter was okay. The world did not explode. Nobody made a big public correction, but the little social temperature shifted, and his mother's abandoned martyr routine started looking less shiny. My daughter adjusted in uneven little waves. Some days she didn't mention him. Some days she asked why he hadn't called. I kept the answer simple. He and I are taking space. Adults can care about each other and still not be good together. You are safe. I never trashed him to her even when I wanted to, because children shouldn't have to hold adult anger like a backpack. The house started changing. Not in dramatic renovation ways. I couldn't afford dramatic. But I moved the couch. I took down the paint samples for the office. I cleared his side of the closet and then stood in the empty space like it was an accusation. My sister came over one weekend and helped me redecorate my daughter's room. We bought cheap curtains, a soft rug, and wall stickers shaped like stars from a discount store. My daughter picked where each star went, with the seriousness of a tiny interior designer. At one point she said, "It's just ours now." Right? I said, "Yes." She smiled. I went into the hallway and cried because apparently I had become a faucet with employment responsibilities. There were days I missed him so badly I felt stupid. I missed his laugh. I missed how he warmed up my car when mornings were cold. I missed the way he called my daughter kiddo. Then I would remember him walking back into the resort to comfort his mother while I sat outside in a dress I had worn for him, and the missing would turn into anger so fast it scared me. A few weeks later, a friend mentioned that he had started seeing someone new. I felt jealous for about 30 seconds. Then I felt sorry for her. Then I felt guilty for feeling sorry because maybe he would change for her. Maybe this woman would get the version of him I begged for. That thought hurt in a gross way. But a few weeks later, the same friend mentioned that his mother had started showing up at his apartment with groceries and staying late when the new woman was there. Same pattern, different woman. That shouldn't have comforted me, but it did. Not because I wanted her hurt. I didn't. It comforted me because it proved I had not invented the weather. My fiancé, ex-fiancé, whatever we are calling him, tried to reach out once through his brother. He wanted to know if we could meet for coffee and clear the air. I asked clear it for what? His brother said he didn't know, and I could hear in his voice that he was tired of being the normal branch on a twisted tree. I said no, not angrily, just no. A quiet no felt stronger than the loud ones. His mother tried too, in a way that made my skin crawl. She sent a gift for my daughter through his brother around the holidays. A little bracelet set, a stuffed animal, and a card in her looping handwriting. His brother texted me first, to his credit. He said he didn't want to be in the middle, but also didn't want to show up with something without warning. I told him he could drop it at my mother's porch, and I would decide. I opened it after my daughter went to bed. The card said, "I know your mommy is upset right now, but I will always love you like my own granddaughter." I read that sentence once, then again, then a third time, because sometimes disrespect is so polished you have to tilt it under the light. Your mommy is upset. Not, I am sorry. Not, I hope you are well. A sweet little poison drop, wrapped in grandmother language, aimed at making me the angry gatekeeper in my own child's mind. I called my sister. She answered, "Who died?" I said, "My patience." She said, "Return it." With what note? With no emotion. I hate no emotion. I am bad at no emotion. My emotions come with backup singers. But she was right. I put the gifts back in the bag, added the card, and wrote one note on plain paper. "Please don't send gifts or messages to my daughter. We are not available for contact." I gave it to his brother the next day when he stopped by my mother's porch. He looked embarrassed and sad. He said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I know you're not the one doing it." He nodded. "She says she just misses the kid. She didn't have a relationship with the kid. She had access to me." He looked at me for a second, then said, "Yeah." That "yeah" told me more than a long explanation would have. His mother sent one more message from a new number, because boundaries are apparently suggestions if you use a different area code. It said she hoped I could be adult enough to have a conversation woman to woman. I stared at it while standing in the grocery store aisle holding a bag of rice. I typed, "You were never my daughter's grandmother. Losing access to me means losing access to her. Don't contact us again." Then I blocked that number too. My hands shook afterward. Not because I regretted it, because being firm still felt unnatural. I had been trained by life, family, motherhood, money stress, and female social rules to explain, soften, cushion, apologize, over-contextualize. A direct sentence felt like stepping outside without shoes. But nothing bad happened. The aisle did not collapse. The rice remained rice. I paid for groceries and went home. Eventually, the questions got less sharp. Not because I found perfect answers, but because life kept demanding normal things. My daughter needed new shoes. The car needed an oil change. A patient at work yelled at me over a bill I did not create. My mother needed help setting up her new lamp. Ordinary problems came back, and weirdly they helped. Normal stress felt almost respectful compared to emotional chaos. At least a broken lamp doesn't ask to move in after the wedding. I did cry that morning, but not the way I thought I would. I cried when I found the suitcase from the trip in the back of my closet. I had shoved it there after unpacking and forgotten about it. Inside one pocket was the bead bracelet my daughter had made, the one I had almost left behind in the room safe. A few beads had loosened. I sat on the floor holding it and remembered how scared I had been standing in that resort room, listening for the door, trying to leave before I lost my nerve. How dramatic it felt. How humiliating. How unsure I was. And then I looked around my bedroom, my quiet bedroom, with my own door and my own bed and nobody's mother asking if she could keep it cracked open, and I laughed through the tears. My ex was still with the woman he started dating after me, as far as I knew. The few updates that slipped through suggested his mother had become part of that relationship too, in the same slow, sticky way. I didn't enjoy hearing it anymore. At first it had felt like proof. By then it just felt sad. He wasn't evil. He was stuck. But stuck people can still pull you under if you tie your life to them. My daughter almost never asked about him anymore. Once in a while, something reminded her, and she would say his name softly, like testing whether it was allowed. I always answered gently. I told her he had cared about her, because he had. I told her sometimes adults can't stay in each other's lives, because they can't. I did not tell her that the last time I saw him, he still looked like someone waiting for permission from a woman who had already taken too much. That night, on the canceled wedding date, my daughter and I made pancakes for dinner because rules are fake sometimes. She spilled batter on the counter, and I pretended to be offended until she laughed so hard she snorted. We ate at the kitchen table in pajamas. She told me about a girl at school who had copied her drawing. I listened like it was breaking news. The house was quiet in the good way, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel like punishment. After she went to bed, I made tea and sat alone at the table. I thought about the woman I had been at the resort, sitting by the pool in the wrong flip-flops, waiting for a man to choose me out loud. I wanted to hug her and also shake her a little. I wanted to tell her she wasn't crazy, but she was waiting in the wrong place. I wanted to tell her that leaving would feel horrible and embarrassing and expensive, and people would misunderstand, and she would miss him, and she would still have to go to work on Monday like her heart hadn't been dragged behind a car. But I would also tell her this. One day she would drink tea in a house that felt like hers again, while her daughter slept safely down the hall, and nobody would be performing sadness in the next room to steal the air. One day the ring would be gone, the posts would be old, the gossip would move on, and her nervous system would stop bracing every time a phone buzzed. One day she would realize that the trip didn't ruin her life. It showed her the life she was about to sign up for before she signed anything. I still don't think I handled everything perfectly. I drank too much that night. I posted a photo with the hotel sign in the background like an amateur. I said cruel things. I checked posts longer than I should have before finally blocking people. I cried over a hoodie. I paid cancellation fees I didn't want to pay just to end one more wedding deposit argument. I was messy and reactive and scared. But I left. And sometimes leaving badly is still better than staying politely. So no, there was no big revenge. No public takedown. No dramatic speech where everyone clapped. His mother did not suddenly understand. He did not become a different man in time to save us. I did not meet some perfect new person who made it all worth it. Life was ruder and more realistic than that. What I got was my home back. My daughter got a mother who stopped teaching her that love means shrinking. And his mother got exactly what she had been so afraid of. A son still close enough to comfort her, but one less woman willing to build a life around her loneliness. That was enough. Actually, no. Let me say it like I mean it. That was more than enough.